Welcome to episode 5 of Wrinkled Wisdom. Today I sit down with Dolly. Dolly is just a vibrant, beautiful, classy lady who has lived an incredible life of her service in the military, the programs that she's involved in her retirement, her courage, her confidence. I love how she tells us where that comes from. And being a father of girls, I think that is just so important. I think you're going to appreciate this. And I really enjoyed having her on. So please enjoy and continue with us on these journey as we keep finding people to interview. I think that it's the uniqueness of everyone's story is just something I'm really excited about. So please enjoy. So I'm excited to have you here.
Well, thanks for inviting me, David.
Yeah, of course. My mom just loves taking your class, so she highly recommended having you on. So I was wondering if we could start, since we're meeting each other for the first time, just where were you born and what year and what kind of life were you born into?
Okay, well, I'm from the East Coast.
Okay.
And I was born before the United States got into the Second World War. And so, of course, I don't remember much about the Second World War. My parents lived through the Great Depression, and like all couples who lived through the Depression, they came away with certain ideas. Well, with my dad, it was always that if you're going to, the first money gets spent on the table. So we always ate really, really well. Lots of steak, fresh vegetables. You know, my mother would not have margarine in the house or canned vegetables. And so I think growing up a really good diet, and I think that's what I attribute my good health throughout my life to, an early good start. What I remember about the war was what happened after the war. When I was, after the war, my father bought a new car. But because during the war, all of the automotive industries were involved with making vehicles for the war, there wasn't any civilian production. So it took my father on a waiting list 2 years to get his car.
Yeah.
My sister at the time was 16. And so we piled into the car, my dad in the front, and my sister in the driver's seat, and me in the back. And so my father started to give her some directions, and she said, "I can do it, Pop." And she drove the car, backed it right up into a telephone pole.
Oh, no.
So that was the end of her driving. My father would never, for the rest of his life, let her drive one of his cars.
Yeah. Would you remember what kind of car it was?
It was a Mercury.
Oh, cool.
He wanted a Ford, but he could only get a Mercury, so he took what he could get.
Yeah. Oh, that's something. Yeah, because a lot of the production lines and everything, were creating things for the war. I think that was kind of the boom that.
And there was a lot of rationing, and my parents had ration books. My mother saved some of them as kind of like for me, so I could have them.
Oh, and you have those still as keepsakes? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what you had to ration? Well, I think shoes one of them?
Shoes were a big item. Well, my parents had 3 kids. I was the youngest, and then I had 2 older sisters. And so when you have kids growing up, I'm sure you do because you have kids that the shoes, go through them quickly.
Yeah.
So the ration book, my mother, what she did was she traded my grandmother's liquor ration for shoe rations.
Oh, there was like a bartering system going on behind the scenes. Yeah.
So that's what she did there.
People were getting clever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where were you at on the East Coast?
Outside of Philadelphia.
Okay. Did you enjoy growing up over there in Pennsylvania?
Well, I never really thought much about it.
Yeah.
I've stayed in the same hometown until I was 18 and went away to college.
Yeah. And where'd you go to college at?
Penn State.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Great school.
Right. It's fun. It was a great, fun campus. Actually, I went not first of all to Penn State, but rather to Ursinus College. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I have not.
But I wanted to be a doctor, and they have a wonderful pre-med program. They place 98% of their graduates in medical schools. It's a small liberal arts college and was rather expensive. So in my sophomore year, my father said to me, "What do you want to do, girl?" And I said, "I want to go to medical school." And since my parents were paying for my education, he said, "Well, I don't really have the money to send you to medical school, but if that's what you really want to do, then I will get the money. And so I realized I'd be putting my parents through, financial hardship if I went to medical school. I was working as a waitress and I couldn't make enough money to pay for it myself. I just paid for my sorority fees and my clothes and books. And that was about all that it would cover what I made waiting on tables.
Yeah.
So anyway, after that, I transferred and went to Penn State. And I loved Penn State.
Yeah.
Penn State was much more fun than Ursinus College. Ursinus was a small liberal arts college, so much so that we had to go to chapel every day. So, most of us weren't in really good condition early in the morning. Throw a raincoat on over the pajamas and then walk over to the chapel and go to mandatory chapel.
Yeah.
But it was a really, very good school. There were some interesting professors. I remember the bio professor, Dr. Van Dam, and he was like so fast. If you dropped your pencil on the floor, you would miss the notes.
Yeah.
And none of what he covered in lecture was in the books.
Yeah. So you got to be right on top of it.
Yeah, right on top of it. And then there was another one. We called him Haploid Wright, Dr. Wright, and he was the English professor. And I have to say that he was really very, very good because I think my vocabulary increased as well as my writing skills under him.
You're very well spoken. I can tell that. I mean, you communicate really well. Do you think
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Did you gather that in college or
I have no idea.
Probably just life in general?
Yeah, I'd say life in general.
What did you go to school for?
Well, I changed my major to psychology, which
okay.
was a big mistake. I was taking an abnormal psych course, as part of the requirements that you have with the liberal arts education. And I loved it. I was having fun with it. This is so, I'll be a clinical psychologist. And that's only, graduate school. That's not as expensive as medical school. So I changed schools, went to Penn State, majored in psychology. And then in my senior year, I decided this is a crock.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was the kid who was, the math and science kid.
Yeah.
When I graduated from high school, I got the science award.
Oh, good for you.
And I took math courses because it was an easy A for me. So here I was in something that's so foreign to me.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what I was going to do because my whole course of study was programmed to do graduate work in clinical psychology. I hadn't taken anything that would prepare me for, for industry.
Yeah.
I had not taken any industrial psych courses, et cetera. Well, over Christmas time, I was home, and my Aunt Emma, who lived in Ocean Grove, New Jersey, came up to visit for the holidays. And she brought a newspaper with an ad from the Asbury Park Press said that the Air Force was looking for people to do graduate work in occupational physical therapy and occupational therapy. And she thought that was right up my alley. So to keep Aunt Emma happy, my Aunt Emma was kind of like, she was sort of a domineering type person, but I loved her. She was a great woman.
Yeah.
So to make her keep her happy, I went to see an Air Force recruiter. And as I walked out the door, my father said, "Whatever you do, girl, don't sign anything."
Yeah. Oh.
So I went to see the Air Force recruiter. And when I walked in, he realized that, what I was taking, I was a senior in college. So he was really happy. And he told me about the officer training program that the Air Force had. So I went back to school. And I was sitting in a local pub with one of my buddies, and we were drinking beer.
Nice.
And he said to me, "What are you going to do when you get out, Dolly?" And I said, "Well, Dick, I really don't know, but what do you think about this?" And then he confessed that he was a second lieutenant in the Air Force, and they were sending him to Penn State to take courses in meteorology. Oh. And he said, "I think you'd love it."
Yeah.
That if nothing else, it'd give you 4 years so you can figure out what you want to do with yourself. So I said, "Oh, that sounds good." Next day, I went down to the local recruiting office, walked in, and I said, "How would you like to recruit somebody?" Me.
Yeah.
And the recruiter was really happy because you don't get too many women.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he said, "Well, we'll set you up and take the Air Force officer qualifying exam." He said, "Most of the women don't make it through that one because of the math." And I said, "No problem. I take math courses for fun."
Yeah.
So he set me up to take the physical and the Air Force officer qualifying test. And 20 days after I graduated from Penn State, I was on my way to San Antonio, Texas on an airplane to officer training school.
Oh, good for you.
I was there 3 months. My father called me a 90-day wonder.
Oh, yeah.
He was,
I bet. So your dad must have really been proud of you.
He was.
Seems like, yeah, I can tell.
Extremely.
What kind of man was your dad? How would you describe him?
Well, my father, he was a very fun person.
Yeah.
And my mother said he was the most positive person that she had ever known in her whole life.
Yeah.
But he had 3 daughters, and he loved them all, and he treated us all like we were boys.
Yeah.
You know, and my mother treated us like we were girls. So we came out with kind of something in between as far as, what we were going to do with our lives.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I think about that with with my daughters. I have girls, and I think about how amazing. I mean, most people have something amazing about them, but girls are so dynamic. Like they can be tough as nails and just soft as ice cream or something. They just are so sweet, but they can be so tough and gritty. And so I really think that's something I try and pay attention to as I'm raising them. Like you have to be very diverse in the way I think you raise them. So it seems like your parents must have done really well to get you to have the confidence to join the Air Force. What year was this?
Oh, this was back in 1959.
Okay, so is that after the Korean War? It must be
Yes.
Right after?
The Korean War, that was before I graduated.
Okay.
Yeah. My first cousin was a Marine in the Korean War.
Wow, that's something. So you went down to San Antonio, Texas, and you did your 90-day.
Right.
Is that the boot camp? Or
it's like a boot camp, but ours was a little less of a boot camp. I mean, we had a lot of academics, and for our physical activity, we were bowling.
Yeah. Not too harsh on the body.
No, and anyway, we had a training officer. Her name was Captain Mercer. We had these horrible uniforms. They were called cotton cords, and you had to iron them. So that you put the skirt on the floor, it would stand up. And we spent probably the first 6 weeks doing nothing but ironing, trying to get these uniforms right. And the men had it easy because all they could do, send theirs to the laundry.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't work for us because you get what we call cat tracks, where the fabric was a little bit pushed over by the ironing.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have cat tracks. Ours had to be perfect. So anyway, she gave us a course called WAF Officer Development. WAF Officer Development. The Air Force had sent her to modeling school. And so she talked to us about all things feminine,
Yeah.
how to walk,
And so when the women in the Air Force had a different kind of standard or protocol, I guess, for the way they presented themselves.
Well,
how
women in the service, kind of had a dowdy image. And at that time, the Air Force wanted to get rid of that.
Oh, okay.
And so at least during that period of time, I don't know what happened, later on.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was interesting. She was a great gal.
Yeah.
I remember when I left, 2 of us had assignments overseas. And I was going to Germany, and the other girl in my unit, she was going to England.
Oh, wow.
We started out, there were 17 of us in our class and 800 men.
Oh, wow. And 17 girls?
Yeah, that was a ratio. And within the first week or 2, we were down to 14 because the rigors of, let's call it, the school were just too much for them.
Yeah.
And so they dropped out. Self-initiated elimination.
Were women? How were they viewed by the men? Were they well respected?
Yes, I think so. Well, you can imagine a bunch of probably 22-year-old. No, I take it back. It was 1959. It was 1963.
Okay,
it was the year, and we had the academic courses with the men.
Okay, and so were the men, were they competitive with the women, or were they helpful? Very competitive?
Well, I'd say they were trying to date us is what it was.
Oh, yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
So if somebody asked us out, what we did was we had to go and run them through personnel, find out whether they were married or not.
Oh,
because
okay.
the married guys were the ones who were the ones who were hot to trot.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Yeah, so
Isn't that something?
we only wanted to go out with somebody who was single.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. So then so you ended up over in Germany?
Yes.
What did you do over in Germany?
I went to directed duty assignment to the 36th Tactical Fighter Wing in Bitburg Air Base, Germany, and I was an intelligence officer
Oh, cool.
for 3 years.
Did you love it?
I love the Air Force overall.
Yeah.
I spent 23 years there.
Oh, wow.
Not at Bitburg, but in the Air Force.
Oh, good for you. Thank you for that. That's incredible. When you did intelligence, can you talk about some of the things you worked on? Or, is it?
Oh, it was kind of pretty much, I don't think anything that I would say would be classified.
Yeah.
In the 36th Tactical Fighter Wing, my first job was Soviet air defense weapon systems deployment. And then the Air Force decided, because Vietnam War was in progress, so they wanted to take the tactical fighter units and take the personnel from the headquarters and put them into the fighter squadrons themselves. So I worked on this project of how to separate out the intelligence functions from the headquarters to put them into the squadron.
Oh, wow.
And when the assignments came out, I didn't get one of those assignments. I was pissed off. So I went to the deputy wing commander, who was a full colonel. I walked in and I told him, hey, I wanted to go to the squadron. I had done all the work and I thought I deserved to go. And he said, well, we don't have any restroom facilities for women down there. And I said, I'll fix them up. So
Yeah.
what I did was I made a sign. One side said men and the other side said women. And I think I put some Snoopy characters on there,
yeah.
Lucy and Charlie. And I hung it over the door. So when I used it, I flipped it that way. Well, I'd never had a problem. But because I stood up for myself, I got the job, which was really a lot of fun.
Oh, good for you. What would you, it's kind of like, I see so many people nowadays, like my generation stuff, where they just kind of accept defeat, like instead of finding the solution or working through it. Like, what drive or what characteristic of yourself would you think got you to kind of request that and come up with a solution? Like, you must have extreme confidence.
I think I was always very confident.
Yeah. Where do you think that comes from?
I'm sure it comes from my family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love hearing that. That's great. That's like my number one goal as like a father to a daughter. It's like to make sure that she is confident.
I'd say be my father, my father's influence.
Oh, good. I love that.
We were very close.
Okay. So I'm excited about this. So you got the job.
Yep.
And then what did that job entail?
Okay.
Throughout the process of it.
I was posting order of battle, and I also did escape and evasion training.
Oh, wow.
So
in case
it was just, it was a requirement. You got to check the box.
Yeah. In case you were like
Yeah. If the air crew was down,
yeah.
Then escape and evasion is really important.
I could be wrong, but wasn't there like 70,000 nuclear warheads or something at one time in the world before the treaties with Russia?
I don't know, but it was crazy.
It
was crazy.
What was it like? What was the mindset of? So this is almost 20 years after we dropped the bombs. What was the mindset or how did you perceive nuclear weapons, or how was it perceived in the military? Was it like America's the biggest, baddest, or what?
No,
or was there a fear?
No.
Or what was it?
It's something to be avoided at all costs.
Right.
And they were very tightly controlled as far as the war plans.
Yeah, good. I wonder about that because I couldn't imagine like when that got unleashed, those bombs. I mean, it was I still think about, even with like the movie Oppenheimer coming out, the impact of that has had on society forever. And I hope we never see it again. I mean, it's crazy.
Nuclear weapons are insane.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom. When you were working on these projects, was there one that was I would say like the most like valuable or to you, or is there something that you reflect on at your time in the military that was, I guess, most like, how would you put it? Like when you reflect back that you appreciate the most, or was there a project you're really proud of?
Yes, Operation Homecoming, which was the return of the prisoners of war from Vietnam.
Oh, cool.
At that time, I was working in the protocol office at Headquarters Pacific Air Forces. And so when those flights came in, our office was involved in setting up the reception for them on Hickam Air Force Base. And we had a lounge there where the pilots, most of them were pilots. But there may have been some other, I just because I remember, when the 26th left Bitburg, it went to Vietnam. And I knew all those men. And 20 of them came back.
Oh,
and
man.
a lot of them, 20 of them didn't.
Yeah. Imagine that was really hard on you.
Well, it's tough.
Yeah.
And so I knew some of the people returning on the planes.
Oh.
And so the flights were coming in the middle of the night, and they were coming into the evacuation lounge. Oh, it was the thing. If you talk about patriotism,
Yeah.
it started out, there were crowds, and we didn't know what condition the POWs would be in. When they came off the plane, deplaned, came across, we had them coming across like there, but the crowds kept coming, and we brought them down in front of the crowds like this. And, you've never seen so many American flags. I mean,
Yeah.
It was just, I can't really explain it, but it just choked me up, the whole thing.
Yeah. I can imagine. That was something I couldn't imagine like not knowing if these people are ever going to come home. Kind of like what's going on in, Gaza right now. Like we still have prisoners over there that they're holding on. And I hope to God someday they can get them out of there.
I have to keep our fingers crossed on that one because it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it doesn't at all. When you, so you were a part of that operation to get them out of there, and then when they received them, were they?
Well, they stopped first in the Philippines, and then they stopped at Hickam Air Force Base, and then they went on to the mainland, and from there they dispersed out to, they're going to hospitals because most of them, like 7 years was kind of pretty normal. A lot of them had been there 5-7 years, and they were in bad shape.
Yeah.
And so when they came into the evacuation lounge, anything that we wanted, we got for them.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night, they were bringing in pizza or, whatever it was a birthday cake. I remember the birthday cake. That was somebody's birthday. So and then 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm trying to figure out how to get a birthday cake in there.
Oh,
but we
good
did
for
it.
you.
We did that.
I love that. That says a lot about your character. That was out of all the things, that was the most, the one that you look back and admire. That's because that's the most probably heartfelt or
Yeah, it was
really human experience there with touching. That's great. I love to hear that because we don't hear a lot about those stories, about, when you look back on, you hear about all these special projects that people do, and people tend to kind of, not like celebritize them, but you see all these special operations like with like the lone survivor or things like that in the military, but we never think about the operations of retrieving people or coming out of like prisoners of war, and then actually just the caretaking process and what goes on in the hospitals and the just the birthday cake.
Well, what I did was I clipped out all the newspaper clippings for that whole time period in there, and I put them into a book like this.
Yeah.
And I got to the end of the scrapbook, and there was still more coming.
Yeah.
So I had no more space to put them, so I just filed them in the back there.
Yeah. Do you have some of these?
I have it, yeah.
Maybe I could have you send me pictures. Can you take pictures of them with your phone or anything and send them to me? Or
there's a lot of pictures.
Oh, maybe we would love to put some of those out. Yeah, if you have any pictures, we would love to have them. You can email them to me and we can put them on. I'd love to put them on this show if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's I think I'm trying to remember where I put them. Oh, yeah, I know where they are.
That's okay. We got time. We got time.
I got them in my office.
So how far along were you into your service when this occurred?
Okay, I spent 3 years in Germany. I spent a year and a half in Omaha, Nebraska. And then I was a year in Osan, Korea. That was after the Pueblo was seized. And then from there, I went to Hawaii at Hickam Air Force Base, and I was in intelligence for about a year. And then I got an assignment to the protocol office, that's kind of an interesting story.
Okay.
General Jean Holm was the first Air Force line officer, who was a woman. There's a difference between line officer and medical officers. There had been some women medical officers who were generals before that, but Jean Holm was the first line officer.
Oh, cool.
So she was coming through the Pacific on a tour and stopped, of course, at Hickam Air Force Base, and we had a formal dining in for her. And at that dining in, I met the Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel. And the next week, he contacted me and wanted to know if I would be interested in a job in the protocol office. So I said, I love that. That sounds like really fun. But I'm in intelligence, and it's a limited resource AFSC, so they couldn't move me. So he went to the General Nazaro, who's a 4-star general, and said, I found female officer I think would be good in the protocol office. But the problem is she's in intelligence and it's limited resource. And the general said, well, if we want her, we'll pull her. So I went to interview with his aide and then went to the protocol office. We had 3 officers. It was run by a lieutenant colonel. And then there were 2 captains, me and a guy named Wendell Wong. And so John Colburn, who was the lieutenant colonel, he took care of the protocol matters for the SYNC. That was the 4-star general. And then I took care of the protocol matters for the 3-star general, who was the vice chief of staff, vice SYNC rather. And Wendell Wong, he took care of the 2-star, who was in the command section. So,
oh, wow.
And we all worked on whatever was going on. But for example, if there was a group of visitors coming in and they were specifically dealing with the 3-star, then I took care of them. But then there were other things that Wendell and I just divided between ourselves. So we did some fun things like taking congressmen on deep sea fishing.
Oh, fun.
Oh, this is one of the greatest things. I had one task was to take a group of air attachés from all over the world out on a Pearl Harbor cruise.
Oh, wow.
So I called and got the Admiral's launch, and we went out there, and there are all these men in all these different uniforms. And I heard this one guy speaking English and with an American accent. And so I went over to him, and I said, your English is wonderful. Where are you from? And he said, Canada.
Oh, oh, that's fun. So you would do in the protocol, so you would handle all the like events and stuff with the higher ups.
Right.
And so would you handle like security and things like that too? Or was it,
no,
did you have to be really careful?
Didn't have anything to do with security.
No.
We would arrange for transportation. For example, I would pick them up at the airport.
Oh, okay.
And, social events.
Yeah.
Tennis matches, golf matches.
Oh, I bet that was a great time.
Yeah, so those are the sidelines. And, they were there on business. And but I got to take care of all the fun things.
Oh, I bet you're the perfect person for it, too. How, going towards like the end of your career in the military, how did you prep yourself to like get out of the military?
Okay,
I know some people don't.
Well, actually, it was when I was a protocol officer.
Okay.
I had gone over to the officers' club to make some arrangements with the assistant club officer, who was had an assignment to Taiwan, I think it was. And so I said, well, you must to take over his first club as the general manager. And so I said, you must be really excited about this assignment. He said, as a matter of fact, I am. He said, you should think about going into the club management. I'd never thought about it. He said, I think you'd be really good at it. So I did start thinking about it, and I asked around. I asked my friends, and my friends said, hey, that would be great for you, because I used to give fairly big parties at my house, and they used to call me, my friends called me the Pearl Mist of Honolulu.
Oh, fun.
But however, the general officers I was dealing with on the staff level, they said, no, you don't want to do that, Dolly. You've got a good career going for you now. If you go into club management, then you'll never get promoted again.
Yeah.
But I decided that I needed a career after I got out of the Air Force. I said, what are you going to do with the youth intelligence officer?
Yeah.
There's not a lot that you can do. So I applied to get into club management and got my first assignment, fortunately, working for a wonderful guy named Chuck Walter. And I was assigned to the Washington, D.C., Bowling Air Force Base
Oh,
as the
wow.
assistant manager there. And so I learned the business from him.
Yeah.
And from there, I spent the year with Chuck and then went to the Air Force Open Mess Management School, which is the club school. And then I took over my first club at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, wow.
Glendale, Arizona, actually.
Yeah.
And from there, I was on to Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And then I had the good fortune to be assigned to NATO Club in Naples, Italy. So I spent 6 years there.
Oh,
That
wow.
was great. And then I retired, came back to the States, and went into private club management as a country club manager.
Oh, cool.
That's how I came out here to the Tri-Cities.
Oh, okay. When you were in Italy, who was like the most? You probably met some famous people.
Yes.
Who was the most famous? Or was there somebody that you were like in awe of meeting? Did you get starstruck at all, or was there somebody that you were just excited to meet? Or
Well, I think probably the most famous person, I mean, nobody really famous, but Mussolini's son,
oh, wow.
who was a jazz pianist and an artist.
Oh, wow.
And he used to come to the club every year and put on a performance. And so one year his manager said, we'd like to do an art show. I said, great. So they put an art show too. And he gave me one of his paintings. And the reason he gave it to me was he said, it looks like you.
Oh, cool.
So I have that hanging in my living room over the fireplace.
Oh, wow. I would love to see that. That is so cool. That is good for you. When you were going along, like in the military, were you did you kind of let the wind just blow you through the military, or did you have goals that you stuck to? Because you probably never expected to be a club manager in the military when you got in, right? Or
No, I had no idea, but
it kind of fit your personality. I'm sure, yeah. And so when you came out to the Tri-Cities, what brought you out here was it the job, or did you want to come to Washington?
I was at the time working at the Sunset Hills Country Club in Edwardsville, Illinois. And at that time, I was on the board of directors of the Club Managers Association of America International Wine Society. And I was the host of that organization, which means like a president.
Oh, cool.
So there was an executive recruiter who I knew who gave me a call. And he said, how would you like to interview out in Washington State wine country? And since I didn't know very much about Washington State wine country, I said, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
So I came out here, interviewed, and so got the job and was the general manager at Meadow Springs
Oh, cool.
for 5 years, and then I retired a second time.
Yeah, good for you. And then you have some hobbies.
Yeah.
What hobbies do you have now?
Well, right now the hobby is the tap dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What got you into that?
I had a dear friend. Her name was Christine, and there's an organization here that does fundraising for the Children's Developmental Center. Christine had a table. I was sitting at a table with my dear friend Christine, and she was a member of the Tri-City Tappers, and with her was Kim Stock, who was the owner of the Tri-City Tappers at that time. So after a couple glasses of wine, the two of them talked me into joining the Tri-City Tappers.
Yeah.
So I did. And I joined the class, beginning class. There were about 6 ladies in it. And in about a month's time, it was just me. So I was the only one left.
Oh.
So she didn't have any other classes other than the advanced class. So she threw me up to the advanced class. So it was either sink or swim.
Yeah.
So I loved it.
Yeah.
And initially I just went because of my friend.
Yeah.
And but then after I got into it, I just found it to be so much fun.
Yeah. I know my mom really enjoys it. It's good to have those things as you retire and your kids grow up and move away. I think it's important to have hobbies like that. And like tap dancing is kind of a forgotten, you know, hobby, I guess you would say, or activity. Like you never hear about it in my generation. I'd even forgot about it, but like I remember being young and you'd be on every once in a while or fairly often you'd see it on TV where people would be tap dancing for talent shows or something like that. So it's nice. I didn't know that it was around. It's nice that it's
it's
coming
around,
back.
it's alive.
Do you guys travel and do?
We have. We've done a couple performances on cruise ships.
Oh, cool.
And we've gone to competitions in different places, like Spokane, over to Tukwila, Washington,
Oh, yeah.
down to Seaside
Oh,
in
fun.
Oregon. And so we've gone around to different competitions. Fortunately, right now they have one that is coming to the Tri-Cities. So we've done, for the past 3 years, a competition here. It's called Team Dance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. We'll have to check that out. I know my mom will want to check it out. What after you retired, have you done a lot? I mean, you traveled a lot in your career. Mm-hmm. Have you done a lot of traveling around the world in retirement?
No.
Or were you pretty much?
Yeah, my idea is you should do your traveling when you're young,
Yeah.
when you can enjoy it, and and you're physically capable of doing that.
Yeah.
Too many people wait till they're retired, and to travel.
Yeah.
And that, if somebody finds that you're retired, are you traveling? No, I'm not traveling. I'm staying at home.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Because I think I love to travel. I've been to 49 of the 50 states.
Good for you.
I've done a lot of we keep going back to Florida. I love taking my daughter places. I love taking her to Disney World and Vegas. We've been to Vegas. She just got back from California. I think it's just so important, I think, to travel. And I would agree on that. It's not only because you're healthy and you're very active when you're young to travel, but you learn so much about people that it kind of can shape your, the way you are as you get old. Like do it while you're young to shape your personality and who you are. And I think it's been one of the gifts that I've been able to do is I was able to travel all over the country in my 20s. And I think that's actually why I do this is because the most consistent regret I heard when traveling was that people didn't record their family members' stories. And it always stuck with me. Like I would hear it all the time. They would be like, man, they would tell me a story about their grandpa or their dad or something and be like, I wish I would have recorded them. I wish I would have recorded them. And we're in such a unique time now where, we're going to pick this kid up and we're going to Miami on Tuesday and we're going to find somebody to interview down in Miami. We're in a unique time where we can do this all over. But, that was my little rant there. But I agree with you though, because, I completely agree with you. I think you should do it while you're young. I hope more people get out there and start traveling, especially after COVID. I think there was
Oh yeah, people went crazy.
Yeah.
Being, locked up for such a long period of time.
Yeah.
And afraid to go out, afraid to travel. So much fear over that whole thing.
Yeah. When you look back on, let's say, your life, is there a time or an event that was most impactful to you that either happened globally or with your career or anything like that you kind of reflect on and are like, I really appreciated that time or this had a huge impact on me?
Good question. I think one event that did, I remember, was when the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
I was in college at the time, and it was very, very frightening. I wanted to quit school and join the military, so I didn't do it at that time.
Yeah.
That was.
I'm not really familiar with the Cuban Missile Crisis. What was it that made it?
Well, I'm
not sure what the
nuclear
details.
weapons in Cuba.
Right,
from
Russia
the
brought them
Russians,
over, right?
yeah. And John Kennedy dealt with that problem.
Yeah. That would be scary.
Yeah. But what he did was he traded out some missile sites, I guess in Turkey, for them to remove their missiles from Cuba.
Right. I just wonder when you look back. I'm trying not to make this political, but when you talk about military, it gets political. But when you look like if you were to, when you're traveling around the world, how did people view America? Like, was there a big respect for your presence around the world, or do you remember how it like felt, or was it? I don't know, because we get told like we're the greatest country in the world and people respect us, and I work with a lot of people from around the world and they love America, and I just wonder if it was like that, back when you were.
Well, I think it depends on where you were.
Yeah.
For example, when I was in Italy, Italians love Americans. However, they think we don't have any sort of fashion sense.
Oh yeah. Well, you definitely have fashion sense.
And they think we don't know how to eat.
Yeah.
We don't appreciate good food.
Yeah. That's okay. I wouldn't mind being judged about those two things.
In Germany, it was some positive and some negative.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I haven't traveled around the world yet, but I'm curious. Someday I will, to figure out like what do they actually think, because you hear so much, on the media that they, they're rude to Americans or they don't like Americans, and then I hear different from firsthand accounts.
Well, my first time that I went to France, to Paris, I was a second lieutenant, and I was 22 years old.
Yeah.
I went with a group of girls, and so we went across the border into Paris. So I had a couple years of French in college. So, and somehow or other, I was very excited about it. So when we crossed the border, all of a sudden, something clicked in my brain, and I started thinking in French.
Oh,
now, I was
cool.
not a good French student, but somehow or other, it all just kind of rolled
cool.
in. So we got into Paris, and a couple girls, let's say, had never been to Paris before, and it's late at night. So we didn't want to go to bed. We were too keyed up. Some of the other girls, it was old hat to them, so they just stayed in the hotel. But the three of us, we got a taxi cab. And since I was the one who was able to speak a little French, I told the guy in French, this little guy with a little newsboy type hat on, and I told him we wanted to go to some place to get something to eat where there was music and dancing that was typically Parisian. So he said, and off he took us to Les Halles, which was a marketplace. And we had a fabulous meal, an interesting conversation. We were seated next to a guy who is a Spanish musician who was playing in one of the clubs there. And then we changed tables, and then we were seated next to a guy who was sort of a French aristocrat.
Yeah.
And he wanted to know why we nice American girls were wasting our times talking to this lowly Spaniard.
Oh, yeah. And so when like in other countries, did you have to go, were you in your military, what do they call them? Okay.
Uniform?
Yeah, your uniform. Then isn't there another term for it when you go out? Do they say
Well, no, most of the time you're in civilian clothes. When you're working,
okay.
you're in your uniform.
Okay.
And when I was running clubs, I was in civilian clothes.
Oh, okay.
Except if I had to go to a staff meeting at the wing commanders.
Okay.
Then I put on my uniform for that occasion.
Yeah. Were you really looked up to by people around, like, because I know like some cultures, like they were not going to let women in their military. Did you ever run into cultures like that where they would bother you?
Well,
or
I think
kind
where
of
I was
snub
most uncomfortable was in Japan.
Yeah.
In the Far East. Because I had red hair. And so, the kids would stare at you like this because you're so strange looking with this red hair.
Oh, yeah.
And you just feel uncomfortable because, the place of women in the Orient is much different than ours. And so I would never want to go there to live or even to go on a vacation. I just was uncomfortable.
Oh, I wonder if it's still that way.
I don't know, but it was at the time.
Yeah.
And I went into a nightclub in Japan with a date, and I was not really received very well. It was just sort of, nobody said or did anything, but you could just tell I wasn't welcome there.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Because in the nightclubs, they have the women who work for the bar girls, they come over and they entertain the male clients.
Yeah.
help them spend their money.
Yeah, I bet.
So I was not welcome.
Oh, I always wonder because it's so hard to, obviously I can't see the world through a woman's eyes, and raising daughters, I try to do my best. So I try and ask those questions just so, I can kind of understand like, oh, you might run into this someday, or you might, if they travel abroad or whatever. So I wonder how it's like. I think it's amazing that you have this like really strong character and confidence. I love that. Was that, so you said you came from your father and your family, but was in the military when you retired, did you ever feel it change in the military, or having that badge of honor of serving your country? Did that give you a sense of pride that just gave you confidence throughout the rest of your life? I mean, I'm not trying to think if I'm wording that right. Do you understand what I'm saying? Kind of like, did you?
I was, when I retired, I remember I was in New Jersey with my mother, and we went to an event where there was a flag and there was Pledge of Allegiance, and, they played some music. And I just was really clutched up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just really heartfelt.
Yeah. Good for you. Well, I keep thinking how lucky we are, just to live here in America, especially with what's going on right now.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing to see what's like, I mean, just to look at what's happened in the last few years, but it's just, I feel so bad for people that live abroad that are facing the dangers they are. And I just feel so lucky. I was sitting down with Flo on the first episode I did, and she's sitting here telling me the story about like in her childhood, because World War II was in her street right in front of her. And, she was sitting there. I was kind of thinking like, this was kind of like where we're sitting down in a basement to them, but that was a bunker, during World War II. And I just think of how lucky we are that we haven't really had any major wars on our soil. And so in a really, really long time.
Yeah. Of course, the worst one was the Civil War.
Yeah. Yeah. We're fighting each other. Let's hope that never happens again. So when so you're married.
Yes.
How long have you been married for?
36 years.
Yeah. And so since you retired almost a little bit after?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I retired in 1986. Well, he was another private club manager, and I met him 10 years before we had our first date.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And when I was managing the military clubs, I was a member of the Club Managers Association of America. And we first met at a workshop put on by the Club Managers Association at the University of Houston. And he was sitting over here. He was one classmate. I got to know him, and we became friends. And then we saw each other about once a year. And hi, how are you? At our annual conference. That's about it. So on this one particular 10 years after we met, I was there, and it was 1987, and I went into I had my little book to write down the hospitality suites, because all the chapters, if you're running somebody for the national board, would run a hospitality suite with booze and all kinds of good food, and so it was a good fun time.
Yeah.
So I was going to get all those hospitality lounges put down in my book, sat down on the table, started writing, and he was over at that other end, and he turned and he saw me. Oh, Dolly, hi, how are you? I said, is your husband with you? And I said, no, don't you know I'm divorced? He said, I am too. How about dinner? So,
oh, perfect. That's so fun. And then you guys, so you guys didn't live in the same area or anything like that?
No.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, we actually got married a year later.
Oh, cool.
It was just like very fast.
Good for you. And what is he like?
Kurt? Oh my, what can I say about Kurt? He's very kind, very sweet human being, stubborn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Opinionated.
Yeah.
Let's see. He's very sweet.
Yeah. I like that answer.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing I can say about Kurt. Kurt is very, very sweet.
Yeah.
And, do anything in the world for me.
Yeah, I bet.
He puts up with me, and that's great.
Yeah, I bet it's worth it. I mean, I haven't known you very long, but your presence is pretty vibrant, so I'm sure you wouldn't have anybody that's not sweet around you. That's cool. And what did he do? What did he retire from?
Well, he was a club manager.
Oh, so he did that.
He's from Switzerland.
Oh, he is.
And he, as a young man, he was a pastry chef.
Oh, cool.
So at the age of 27, he left Switzerland, and he had a job in Houston, Texas, working for the Shamrock Hotel there as a pastry cook. So he came to the United States at the age of 27. He was married at that time, and they packed up all their household goods and brought them across the ocean, which was kind of crazy, but it never occurred to them that they could buy them here.
Yeah, you could just get rid of it and get it all here. Yeah.
So anyway, he stayed in that profession, moving around different places, and then he got a job as in the Houston Club, which is a very large private club,
Yeah.
city club. And the job that he had there was as a food production manager, which is kind of like an executive chef.
Mm-hmm.
And then he always wanted to be in management. So he crossed over into management there, became a night manager. And from there, he took over a club as a general manager. And so for the rest of his career, he was a private club manager.
Oh, good for
both
him.
in city and country clubs.
Oh, good for him. I bet you got to meet all kinds of neat people.
Oh, yeah, he's met people like George Bush and,
Oh, yeah, because he lives right there somewhere, right?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Me and him have the same birthday.
Really? Which one?
Young George Bush.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
July 6th.
He knew both of them, yeah.
Oh, cool. Does he have any like comments about them or?
Oh, we thought they were great.
Yeah.
Great.
You hear like you hear of people that have met them and they talk about like how nice they are and the charity, because I think George Bush still does a lot of charity work and hosts veterans and he does a lot of things for people, so he must be pretty kind at heart. And I think he paints, right, or something like that. But yeah, I always hear good things about him. When your husband was down in Houston, how did you get him to come out here?
Oh, no, he wasn't in Houston. He went he changed jobs a number of times.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
In that period of time. When he was at the Garden of the Gods Club in Colorado Springs.
Oh.
In 1987.
Okay.
And I was running a club in Mequon, Wisconsin, which, I had just come from 6 years in Italy.
Yeah.
To Mequon, Wisconsin.
Yeah, talk about polar opposites.
Oh my God, that first winter, it was terrible.
Oh, it's wild.
So it was really an easy thing for me to say, hey, I'm coming out to Colorado with you.
Oh, yeah?
So that was easy.
Oh, and Colorado Springs is beautiful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And his club had a small hotel, and that's where we were married, in his club.
Oh, cool. I love that. That's fun. It's neat to see, like, you don't realize how many people, like, just around have done all these amazing things around the world and stuff. So it's really cool to hear your story. If you were going back, so I always try and, like, get a little bit of wisdom out of somebody. But if you could give, like, advice about life or things that you're proud of who you are, what advice would you give to, like, a younger generation or kids?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know that I have a lot of advice to give, but let me think.
Yeah.
Just go for it, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, go for it. That's one thing. I think some people, like, they spend a little bit too much time overthinking some things. And I understand there's risk, and reward with things, but that's something I'm getting a little bit more as I get older, is like, just go for it. Just do it,
Yeah, I never really figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up. So.
Yeah. And you seem happy and healthy, and you must say very active.
Yeah,
so
I am. Well, when I retired from club management, I loved my job. I loved absolutely what I did. The Meadow Springs Country Club is a fabulous club, great membership. So anyway, I was terrified of what I was going to do after I retired. So I filled up my calendar with all kinds of things. Right now, I'm the vice president of the Tri-Cities Wine Society. I belong to the local chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution and Daughters of Union Veterans of the Civil War. And of course, then there's the Tri-City Tappers, which keeps me very, very busy.
Oh, good.
So I don't lack for something to do.
So you would encourage people that are maybe approaching retirement to make sure and find things to keep you busy?
Absolutely. The one thing you don't want to do when you retire is sit in your rocking chair watching television.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing that you can do. You've got to stay physically and mentally active,
Yeah.
because otherwise, you just deteriorate.
Right. And we only get one shot at this.
That's right.
Yeah. I think that's
Yeah, and live every day to the fullest. Take one day at a time.
yeah. That's one thing I think people caught up, not to take it back to COVID, but it's like you really realized, I know a friend of mine's mom who she was so afraid of COVID, rightfully so. She was older and had some health risks, but her body deteriorated in those 2 years. She wasn't
Doing anything?
She wasn't
Just
doing
sitting there?
anything. Yeah. And it was hard to see that, but yeah, I really hope that if people that consume this take that tip, because it's really important too, if you have grandkids or, younger generations that look up to you, they really want that time with you. And I'm very lucky where my grandparents are 90 and 87 and they're a million miles an hour. Like I'm so lucky. And my step grandma who's 95 is the same way. They're just so healthy and fit. And I'm so thankful that my grandparents have fought to be active and healthy, because I still get to enjoy them, into my late 30s. And it's such a gift to have grandparents that long. So do you have any grandkids or
No, I had never had any children.
no children?
No.
And so it seems like you spend a lot of your, you spend your time though for a community, which is really cool. I think that you're involved in the community
I never had
and
any
friends.
children because it just wasn't in the cards.
Yeah.
I was married the first time, and then we got divorced, and then I was single for 10 years.
Yeah.
And those are probably the prime years of my life where I would have had kids if I was going to have them. Then I got married a second time. That ended in divorce too.
Yeah.
And so, you do what's responsible. You don't get
That's
pregnant
right.
if you're not married.
That's right. Yep, that's right. Well, it's good for you. Well, I don't know where we're at, but is there anything else that you'd like to share before we go? Or I really appreciate you coming on here. I know that I can tell you just from what my mom has said, like I really appreciate you too, because I know we'd never met, but for my mom to get out and do something and to have that, she really needed that because of what you're talking about, being active and doing that. And my mom is so talented, and she lives in a tiny, tiny town. So when she's here, I try and get her to get out and, kind of show her talents or do something that supports her personality. So I just want you to know that I really appreciate that. And I know that she does too. And I'm sure she's not the only one. So I just wanted to tell you that while I had the chance.
Yeah, that's what the Tri-City Tappers is all about.
And how can people, because we'll post this episode out locally. How can people, if they're interested,
We have a
involved?
Website is tricitytappers.com.
Okay.
And on there's the information on the group. And if you want to contact us, you can just fill out, the thing on the website or give me a call.
Okay. And what was the other things that you were a part of again? That can
Daughters of the American Revolution.
and can people support that or donate to it, or what do some of those
The
things do?
DAR, it's a lineage society.
Okay.
So if you have had ancestors who either fought in the Revolutionary War or contributed money to it, you're eligible to join the DAR.
Oh, cool.
So you can go online and find that as well.
Okay.
And it's a big national organization.
Okay. I bet you people would be really interested in that. I mean, I know my family was not involved they came from overseas, but just a few generations above me. But yeah, I bet you people would love to check that out and know, because that'd really be something.
Well, you can do your genealogy online
Yeah.
and find out, if you do have ancestors, and you might be, people may be surprised
Yeah.
that they actually do.
Maybe I should do it.
Yeah. When I was growing up, I was told I was a descendant of John Adams, second president of the United
Yeah.
States. And when I got into genealogy, I discovered it's not true.
Uh-oh.
But we were descended from a guy named John Adams who came to the Plymouth in 1621 on a ship called the Fortune.
Oh, okay.
And so maybe that's where the confusion came in.
Could be.
And also, the deeper and deeper I got into genealogy, more interesting things that I found out.
Yeah.
One of which was John Adams's great-grandfather was also one of in my line. So it was a different branch.
Oh, yeah.
So we're distant cousins.
Yeah.
So,
Isn't that something?
yeah. So there were two Adams lines that come into.
Yeah.
And then I looked for a long time. My maiden name was Jenkins. I looked for a long time, and I had a brick wall, but finally got that cracked open and found out that they too came in the 1600s. And even more interesting was my grandmother was a Quaker. So my mother's family, they were all Quakers. And that was interesting. And I found that this Jenkins, when they came over to Massachusetts, they actually, there was a movement of Quakers, and they became Quakers.
Oh, wow.
So I have both sides of the family. So it's kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting when you get over there to the East Coast because, I don't think a lot of people that have spent, like a lot of people in Washington or that I talked to, they've like never left the West Coast. And I'm like, you got to get over to the East Coast because it's a whole different world over there. It is so much older. Just have you ever been to St. Augustine, Florida? Mm-hmm. Like I always tell people, you got to go to St. Augustine, Florida. It's the oldest city in the United States. And it's, it just to give you perspective of what Washington is, where, one of the oldest dates you see out here is like in the 1800s. Then you go out there and it's the 1500s. It's pretty cool. I think everybody should go travel. But I'm probably getting where I'm running out of memory.
Okay,
maybe.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. No,
No,
not at all. No, it's perfect. I don't want to bore you any longer either, but I really, I appreciate it. I think I really appreciate you spending the time coming over here, and I loved hearing your story. It's cool. I like hearing of independent women who have just went out there and done so much, and with the military. And I like that how you kind of pushed your own story. Like when you wanted to get on the job that you wanted, you found a solution to get it. And I hope that people take those stories in and understand that just to fight for themselves and to get there, do what you want to do. What'd you say? Go for it. I like that. I think that's what you said. Go for it.
Right.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And then if we ever want to do it again, if you think of something, we can always do it again.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Dolly.
Okay. Thank you.